Wysteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to the wonderful world of fairies. We are now on the letter P. Pacolet. Pacolet was a famous dwarf or familiar spirit from medieval lore. Pacolet created a wooden horse bridled with bast, which had the ability to run through the air. Pacolet was described as being a venerable gentleman who was born the heir to one of the wealthiest families in Great Britain, but was accidentally drowned at the age of 1 month. Padfoot, a monstrously large black dog from the folklore of Leeds, England. Padfoot was a sheep-sized bogey, like the Clud of Belgium. Was normally invisible, but it could shapeshift. Most often, it would take the form of a bear, a gigantic black or white dog walking on 2 or 3 legs, a demonic-looking sheep with burning eyes, a calf, an enormous black donkey. Its eyes were said to be as large as tea plates. No matter the form this fairy animal assumes, it would always be accompanied by the sound of dragging chains. To see Padfoot was a death omen. Sometimes to see it would cause a person to die of fright. Any attempt to fend off the fairy would guarantee the creature would maul its victims. Peian. Peian is a fairy gathering of the dwarfs of Scandinavia. Although no human has ever been witness to one of these events, it's said they meet in secret to discuss business, play and worship. The most famous ruling ever made as a Paian was against the dwarf Amaz because he chose to live as a human, and he was censored and then excommunicated from his people. Pain Jainen. In the folklore throughout Western Europe, there are species of fairy who can live to be 4,000 years old. They're described as looking like small white horses and are seen racing through the Alps. They enjoy teasing children, and although sometimes they are harmed by the prank, no child has ever been killed by one. Although these fairies do not steal children, they do bring them terrible nightmares. An effective means to repel them from this form of harassment is to place a broom or a bit of iron under your child's pillow. Palatine, one of these set of triplets born fountain nymph, so she's another nymph. Pallas, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys. Peline, in Greek mythology, she was a nymph of the Torquay-like, that's Venezuela, in case you didn't know. Pamalindo, a male dwarf in Italian fairy lore. Pamalindo was a lazy, mean, obese, and small individual who disliked many people and was disliked by other fae. He was described as wearing a fur hat, red clothes stained with animal fat. Pamalindo was a scavenger because he was either forbidden or unable to kill animals for himself. He was known to run animals off cliffs or cause them to impale themselves on low branches. In some of the folklore from northern Italy, Pamarindo was not an individual fae, but rather a species of fae. Papa Beau, also known as Daddy Bouchon, Hairy Man, Jab Molassa, Mitri Boys, and Master of the Woods. In Trinidad folklore, Papa Boy is the custodian of the trees and the guardian of the animals. He has many different forms he appears in, such as a deer, a man in ragged clothes, or as an extremely hairy old man who is very muscular and strong, but has cloven hooves for feet and leaves growing out of his beard. In the original mythology, Papa Beau travelled the woods at night with his walking stick and his nocturnal companion, a witch, because they could not tolerate the light of day. Para. The para are a species of kobold in Finland that steals milk from neighbours' cows. After he drinks all he can, the fairy takes it back to his family's churn, disgorges the milk into it, and then churns it into butter. Paralda, the king of the element of air. In ancient Greek lore, Paralda was the leader of the sylphs, a type of very beautiful, small fairy associated with only the air. Paradami. In the Conte du Caylus fairy tale, entitled Rosanella, Paradami was one of the two viable candidates worthy of earning the position of fairy queen. As each of the two candidates was equally matched for the position, a contest was held to determine the winner who would win the title of the queen. Parthenope, in classic Greek mythology, is a maiden, means maiden face. She's one of the named sirens, and she's very malicious type of nymph. Persephone, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys. Pasithea, a sea nymph from Greek mythology meaning all divine. Pasitho, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys. Patch. Patch was one of the fairies mentioned being in the company of Robin Goodfellow in the 17th century pamphlet. He and his fellow fairies Grim, Gull and Pinch are all said to have shape-shifting abilities. The Patuparaihi. Now they do have many other names, but according to Maori mythology, they are the pale-skinned fairy spirits dwelling in forests and mountain tops of New Zealand. Only 3 things are able to ward them off. That's ashes, fire, and red ochre, used to make taboo objects. They consider themselves a taboo anyway, as they only eat raw meat, and these 3 are particularly fond of uncooked fish. Sound great, don't they? The Pialada, the shaggy one of the Fuath, a collective name for the malicious and monstrous water fae in Scottish folklore, like the kelpie and such like. Peas Blossom. Peas Blossom is a flower fairy and an attendant of Titania, the fairy queen. Peck, and also known as Pechta. In Scotland lowland mythology, Petch was a short gnome-like fairy being who, although small of stature, was extremely strong. Described as having long arms, wide feet, wild red hair, the Petch was believed to have been the builders of the ancient stone megaliths of the ancient Scotland. Pecks were strictly nocturnal fairies, as they could not stand the light of day. Pecham de Lin, a species of witchling from the folklore of southern Germany. They're said to have the eyes of sleepy children, meaning their eyes are more or less closed all the time. Beautiful. From the folklore of the Orkney Islands north of Scotland comes Beautiful, one of the little people, and they're in stories everywhere. When we say little people, it generally means a type of fae. Pegonel. Pegonel was a malicious water fairy haunting a well at Waddow near the Ribble River in Clitheroe, Lancashire, England. It is believed every 7 years she drowns someone. According to the local law, Pegonel was originally a servant girl at Waddow Hall in Waddington. One day she had a bitter fight with the lord and lady of the house. Peg stormed off to fetch a bucket of water for the house, and while she was gone, the master of the hall wished she would fall in the well and break her neck, rather than return, as angry as she was. The wish came to pass, and Pegonel returned as an angry nymph, set to punish those who wished her dead, and everyone in the parish. Chickens disappeared, calves were born deformed, cows fell sick, and young adults fell sick. In order to appease the water fairy, Every 7 years, a good, sound, living sacrifice has to be made to the well. Peg Powler, one of the many nursery bogies of British folklore. Peg Powler is believed to live in the warm water wells supported by the River Tees, said to be bottomless and referred to as Hell's Kettles. These wells, as were the green-haired Peg Powler, was like sort of the Jenny Greenteeth of Lancashire. They hunt for prey, children who venture too close to the edge of a watery domain. She was especially active on Sundays. It is possible this fairy being was once worshipped as a river goddess who was offered human sacrifices. The foam that gathers on the stream's surface is called Peg Powler's suds, implying she's doing her laundry. The scum that accumulates on the surface is known as Peg Powler's cream, the runoff of her sloppy milk from her cow. That does not sound very nice, does it? Let's be honest. Pegasus, a nymph of a spring of the river Grenikos in Trod, Anatolia. Apparently, Pegasus was loved by the Trojan prince Amathion. That was described by an ancient Roman poet anyway, that it was some sort of love story. Pethio, also known as Suada, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus, Tethys. Pelorus. Pelorus was a nymph of Sicily in Greek mythology. Pels Nickel. In northern Germany, Pels Nickel, Furry Nick, is the name of the Christmas spirit. His name was one of the epithets of the god Odin, indicating Pez Nickel was likely demoted from god to fairy even before the introduction of Christianity. Prior to the Lutheran Reformation, Pels Nickel was a jovial nature spirit of winter who was described as wearing furs, flying through the night sky, would visit homes and deliver toys to children. After the Reformation, Pels Nickel was described as wearing religious robes and would deliver toys on St. Nicholas' feast day. In the vulgar German colonies, Pels Nickel was utilised to a nursery bogie. He was described as wearing an ill-fitting sheepskin coat and a shaggy hat, and having a stingy beard and moustache and bushy eyebrows. Here, Peltz Nicole handed switches out to parents and would whip children who were unruly. Somehow, magically knowing the history of their behaviour, it would appear each New Year's Eve. Wow, sounds lovely. Penates. In the mythology of ancient Rome, Penates, the inner ones, were originally the gods of the storeroom, but grew to become gods of the entire household. Worshipped at the hearth, a portion of each meal was given to them and was like household fairies, I guess, like similar to the brownies and such. They did good deeds and household chores for the family at night. They were unaffected by sunlight, but they chose to live nocturnally. So it's not that they didn't like it, it's just that's how they chose to live. Peneus, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys. Le Pierre Fodord, Father Birch Rod, Father Whipper, and Pierre Fouché is its other names. A famous bogeyman from Dutch, French, and German lore. The mean spirit and ugly Pierre Fodord was a well-known figure in Christmas mythology, dressed in black or dark grey, sometimes described as having horns and a pointed tail. This nursery bogie would accompany Pierre Noel, Father Christmas, on his rounds on St. Nicholas Day and whip with his birch rod all the naughty children. Peri or Parikas, Perikas, ancient Persian lore, the Peri to surround. They were like forest and river goddesses, all later became seen as fairy beings. The descendants of fallen angels, kind of related to jinn, such they had been denied entry into paradise until they have performed their penance. In the original mythology, the Peri were considered to be evil beings, but evolved into benevolent beings. I guess whether you want to say they are, you know, benevolent or happy beings is completely up to you. And I think everybody does have different encounters with them, so it's hard to justify whether they are one way or another. I don't think they're either. I think, like most fairies, they're probably in the middle. Perit. In Albanian folklore, the Perit were female nature spirits living in the mountains. Described as being extremely beautiful, these benign fairies dress entirely in white. Although considered to be kindly, the Perit would harshly punish anyone who was wasteful with bread. Pero. According to Okuslos, the ancient Greek logographer, Pero was a naiad from southern Greece, but whether that's real or not, it's more that's more sort of like a myth, a real myth, you know, like where the others they're all over in history, but that one's not so much. Perse, also known as Persis and Persa, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys. Petria, one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys. Le Petit Colin, a famous household fairy from France. Le Petit Colin and his constant companion Le Grand Colin lived in or on the earth. Normally invisible, the fairy would show its appreciation from time to time by assisting in household chores, meaning this fairy is very similar to the brownie. Pexy, or Colpex is the other name for them. In Dorset, England, pisk, pisk, pixies are pexy and are said to live in coppices and woods. Used as a nursery bogey, children are told to behave properly or the pexy will punish them. It's quite funny that. Only because the way that you say like pexy and pixie can get you muddled up. Fianno, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys. Phaeathus with a P. In Greek mythology, Phaeathus was a water nymph. She was one of the Danads, actually. And then we have Phalasia, and that's a classic Greek mythology nymph. But she's one of the Maenads. Actually was associated with the canonical muses as well. So she could be both or either or either, I suppose, depending where you're reading it from. Fi Nang Mai. Similar to the dryads and wood nymphs from Greek lore, the Fi Nang Mai, Fi female tree, live in the sacred trees which surround Buddhist temples in Thailand. These female fairy spirits were generally considered to be benign and were believed to refill the bowls of tired pilgrims. Fi Suk, originally worshipped like gods before the introduction of Buddhism to Thailand, the Fi Suk are now regarded as nature spirits who assist humans by teaching them lessons they will need to know in order to leave the cycle of reincarnation. In some of the more remote regions, the Fi Suk are regaining their former godhead status. Described as wearing traditional native dress, these fairies are considered to be neither good nor bad, but neutrally aligned entities. I think most actually are, and I think that's a mistake people make by, putting them as one or the other. I think, in all fairness, most of them are not that, like they are all very different, like we are. Phra Phum. In Thailand, Phra Phum, Lord of the Place, is a household spirit, guardian of the Om. To ensure her goodwill, small houses or psalms are placed near the entrance of the home where daily offerings are made. That's kind of pretty, I like that. Funonodri, also known as Boganes and Fenodari, but this Finodari is PH. So in Manx fairy lore, kind of means fairy one, a species of solitary fairy very, very similar to the brownie and the kobold. Very kind and obliging to the family and the farm it occupies. It generally like to settle in, and become one with the family and help them do what they like to do, I guess. Pickle Harin. Likely originating in Teutonic mythology, Pickle Harin is a singular sea fairy, and it's a sea-going fairy, covered with hair and wearing garments of leaves. It's like the Scottish brownie, but he lived aboard ships. Pick-Tree Brag, a shape-shifting barghest or goblin haunting the roads of North England. Pick-Tree Brag would, like the Pooka of Ireland, appeared as a horse enticing travellers to mount upon its back. When it had its victim, it would bolt off, taking them on a wild chase across the countryside, ultimately dumping the rider off in a pond somewhere. Pick-a-Tree Brag is also known to appear as a calf with a white handkerchief around its neck, a donkey, a naked man without a head, and as four men holding up a white sheet. The Pigwidgeon, also known as Pillywiggins. In England, the Pigwidgeons are a species of diminutive fairies looking after the well-being of wild flowers. When sighted, they are often mounted upon the back of bees because they help the bees go from plant to plant pollinating. Pillen, a powerful male nature spirit in the Mapuche mythology. The Pillen resides high up in the Andean mountains. They control catastrophic natural disasters such as droughts, earthquakes, thunder, tidal waves, and volcanic eruptions. Considered to be a sort of ancestral spirit, shamans would consult the Pillen to determine the source of an illness. Associated with fire, initiation rites, shamanism, and volcanoes, the Pillen were associated with the devil by Christian missionaries. Pillywiggins, a diminutive winged seasonal fairy associated with spring. The playful Pillywiggins, also known as flower fairies and spring fairies, live in the wildflowers growing at the base of oak trees. These trooping fairies have no particular interest in humans, but have been seen acting out events of human life, such as parties and weddings. Unlike other fae, they do not play pranks of any kind. Pillywiggins are led by their beautiful and seductive fairy queen Ariel. While her people ride upon the backs of bees, she rides upon a bat. Pinare. In the mythology from the people of the Solomon Islands, the Pinari are fairies of the islanders. These nature spirits are described as having human-like bodies with hairy bodies and long legs. Gosh, that's an interesting explanation. Then we move on to Pinch, and Pinch is one of the fairies in the Robin Goodfellow tales. Pinkoi. The Pinkoi of the Shillot mythology of Shili was a water fairy described as being half fish and half man, so therefore it's kind of like a merman. Many sailors who lost their ship at sea were fortunate enough to wash upon shore, credit to the Pinkoi with the deed. The Pinkoi had the natural ability to attract fish and shellfish in abundance, and instead of ruining mankind, they would save mankind. Pinkett, also known as Ignis Fatuus, Pinkett, Piuket. In the parish of Badsey, England, the Ignis Fatuus was known as the Pinkett, a Dutch word which means to wink, one of the attendants of the fairy queen, apparently anyway. Paranu, in the freshwater rivers of Argentina, South American fairy lore says the Paranu is a malicious water fairy known for overturning boats, described as looking like a large black fish with the head of a horse. The large-eyed Paranu is particularly aggressive. And it does say Paranu, by the way, not piranha, just so we're clear on that, because I don't want anyone thinking maybe that's what I was meant to be saying. But no, it is literally what it says it is. Plaski, meaning scream. In Russian folklore, Plaxi was a hag who tormented children at night. Offerings of bread and salt are made to her. A part of the offering is rubbed on the child and rest, if left, under the stove. Interesting. The way that they deal with these fairies back then in olden times is certainly different to how we would deal with them now, I suppose. Anyway, guys, that's the next episode of The Wonderful Fairies. Please hit that like, share if you can, and if you've not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. Many blessings.
Wisteria, energy, twister.